Bienvenidas, bienvenidos. It is graduation time, and we're going to take a look at the history of graduation and some amazing, inspiring youth that are teaching us about using graduation as a time to make political statements. They are truly leading us in our moral compass, in our righteous and justice road to seek social justice for all everywhere. But first, this is Latina Literati. Today we are looking at the origins of graduation. Where does this ceremony come from? What is its meaning? How did we get from where it began to where it is now? Well, the first graduation or the first presentation of a diploma is actually in the Islamic tradition. On sheepskin, there was a recognition that you had learned sufficient, a curriculum, a course of study that then allowed you to teach others. And how special is that? That is exactly what professionals are taught when we study professional responsibility, that which we know must be shared with others. So whether you're an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever your profession is, one of the core principles when you're studying is something called professional responsibility. And so it's just amazing to me that at the origin is also this continued value that what you have must be shared. That is the value of learning, that you must share it with others, as we're doing here today, about things that you have learned and things that make other people's lives better. So some examples of where these sheepskin could be earned is, for example, the ancient university. These are advanced learning schools that would evolve into universities. And so there is one in Fez, Morocco, established by a woman in 857 called Al-Qarawiyyin. Beautiful architecture. Moroccan architecture in of itself is spectacular, but the place is beautiful. I've been there, and it's just wonderful to see and imagine that a woman in 857 had the resources to say, I'm going to establish this university, and it still exists today. Amazing. The other one, of course, is Al-Azhar in Cairo, Egypt in 870. So really the end of that 800 period, you see these places flourishing in the northern part of Africa. Really fascinating that even today they continue to function as universities. And so we're talking about 2,000 years, or almost 2,000 years. Amazing, amazing places that still act as centers of learning today, and that from which you then graduate and receive this certificate, this piece of, now it's of course paper, that allows you to teach and to go on to graduate studies and to share your knowledge with others. In 1088, in the University of Bologna in Italy, you have a university established, and that is also considered the oldest university in Europe. In 1224, you have the University of Naples, established by the King of Sicily. I don't think we appreciate how important Sicily was, but it was, and it continues to be a beautiful place. But in terms of power, because of trade around the Mediterranean, it was central to many different historical kingdoms and, of course, empires. So by 1500, every major city in Europe, I'm not going to deal with Asia because it would be too long a video, but in terms of Europe, by 1500, every major city, and also on the continent and also in England, had some sort of higher learning university or some sort of what we would come to know as universities. So that's fascinating. That's not that long ago. I mean, really, we're talking about not even 1,000 years of higher learning in the West. Fascinating. In the East, I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but I'll just say it's several thousand years. But what is interesting is that the vast majority of humanity, as I've said so many times before, could not even read and write. So the very fact that we, as we sit here today, can read and write and can seek further education and can attend university is almost miraculous. Literally only 150, 200 years ago, only those with the most resources could have private tutors, could attend universities, could have all of those opportunities. And so for us, if there's one message with regard to the history of graduation today, is what a privilege it is to be alive at this moment in time where you can learn as much as you like and continue your education and to better yourself and those around you. And so it's a fabulous moment to be alive. In this hemisphere, the first university established is the University of Santo Tomás de Aquino in 1538 in Santo Domingo. Yay, Dominican Republic! So it begins as, of course, that there were educational institutions and structures and curriculum under the empires of the Nahuatl and the Maya. But the concept that we now have of university was not the same. And so that's why I'm not going into the educational systems of those, but in some other video I might if you'd like to know about them. So after Dominican Republic, you have the university in Lima and you have the university in Mexico City. So those are the three set up in the 1500s in this hemisphere. Very, very prestigious and old institutions, which today their graduates I know are very proud of. Of course, in Spain, the oldest university is Salamanca. And it is the structure and curriculum of Salamanca, which is used mostly by the Jesuits as education is set up in the colonies in the Caribbean, South America, Central America, and North America. And of course, the word education comes from the Latin root educare, which means to lead out of. It's made of two words, and it means to lead out of perhaps ignorance. And so that's what we try and do every day as teachers. And I'm so grateful to the teachers that I have throughout my life who've inspired me over the years in my passion for reading. Modern education as we know it, that from which you are graduating, or perhaps you know someone who's graduating this spring, comes from the Prussian model. It was called the factory model because it was the first time that people or children were grouped by age, whereas before it was by ability. Interesting. And so that has only been in the last 150, 200 years where you've had this concept that by age, everybody goes together, learns specific things, learns towards a test. Very interesting, very different than the original concept of that, as you would work with someone who knew more and you would learn at your own speed. This modern concept of factory school was actually seen as very futuristic, very egalitarian, because as public schools or schools where anyone could attend, who had the time and the resources to attend, who didn't have to work in the fields, who didn't have to work in the factories, then you had not just public institutions but private institutions being set up for not just for students to learn, but of course to graduate from. And so it was seen as something that opened up education to everyone because it kind of set a standard and a curriculum that everyone followed all along. So we've all been sacrificed to that. At graduation, the gown worn is a tradition that comes from medieval scholars all around the world. People dressed distinctly depending on what it is that you did in life. And so teachers or scholars dressed in robes that are the origin of what we call the graduation gown now. The caps were originally hoods, and you can see here the different colors and what they represent of the hoods. So for example, law is the color of wine, in vino veritas. And so each color represents a different area of study, and also schools have their colors that they use for the gowns and caps as well during the special ceremony. And we of course all know the graduation song, da, na, 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 na. Right. So that was composed by a composer named Elgar in 1901 and was actually a coronation processional dedicated to a British monarch. It has been used in graduations for about 100 years all over the West, and we of course identified immediately with graduation, but it's not that old actually. So I think that's fascinating as well. We hope you and your family, as you are marking these important milestones for those around you, are celebrating a graduation and of course nudging them on to the next level, whatever that next level may be. Because you would think that, for example, in California, 40% of the population, over 40% is now Latina, Latino, and you would think that then parity would mean that 40% of all incoming classes at all levels of education should be representative of that. but alas, they are not. So we have a ways to go, but we're getting there. La reconquista continúa. And now for my favorite part of the video, the book recommendations. Today I'm going to recommend two books. I actually had a bit of a challenge finding books that I felt were representative of the history of education, because I thought that would be of interest to some of you, and I hope it is. The first book I'm going to recommend is They Came for the Schools. And this is a book about what happens when reactionaries try and shut down schools. There is a city in Texas called Salt Lake, Texas, and in this school district, they were trying to counter racism with more progressive, or at least some inclusive ideas in the education. And there was a right-wing swing pendulum by the minority, because Latinas are now the majority in Texas. And so what happened, the story of what happened in this town of Texas with this right-wing pendulum swing. So it's interesting, and I think it's indicative of what's happening in different places that need to be rectified quickly. The second book I'm going to recommend to you is The Heart of Culture, A Brief History of Western Education. This book is by Michael Naughton and Jonathan Reyes, and what it does is basically defend Western education. It gives you the whole history from the Greeks all the way to the present, talking about how we have inherited these concepts and ideals and different themes of education for 2,000 years from the Greeks. But it is something that I think is exclusive in that it doesn't, in my opinion, give credit to all of the different cultures that are responsible for those ideas which we can study today. We know, for example, that the Library of Alexandria was burned, so that was lost. But the translations of the Greeks actually came to us from, of course, Andalusia. In Andalusia, it was the great libraries there where translating was happening from Greek into Arabic and also Spanish. So fascinating that that's where many of the things that we get to study today were saved. And so we need to be grateful for those that saved the thought of so much that we can learn today. Thank you so much for coming to the end of the video. We would love you to subscribe to Latina Literati. We would love you to join our community. Any requests that you may have for videos, we do videos on request, so let us know what you'd like us to talk about on this channel. And we, of course, congratulate all those who have graduates in their family and who are nudging them along for the next level, towards the next educational level. So thank you so much. Con mucho cariño, mucho salud, mucho amor. Gracias.